Amplifier plugins have really gained popularity in the guitar community, and although they were initially marketed towards users in the recording space, they've gotten popular amongst hobbyists and pros alike who want to plug their guitar into their computer and get a pretty close facsimile to a real-life amplifier experience. These plugins are typically loaded with features and presets, and they can be confusing to use sometimes if you're not familiar with tools like EQ, microphone selection, compression, and more. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to approach a guitar amp plugin using the 2-Rock Bloomfield Drive plugin from MixWave. The reason I chose this plugin is because I own that amp. Not only is there a lot going on with the amplifier, but there's even more going on in the plugin, and I really want to make sure you have a solid idea of not only how to use this plugin, but other ones you might encounter. All right, so let's take a look at some really important features first before we start playing and getting tones. This is important because it's going to help you run the plugin optimally and really get the best performance from it. So a lot of you are going to say, quit talking, start playing. Well, some people really want to know about this stuff, so I want to make sure I help to educate those folks. So bear with me. We'll get to playing in a moment. Now, your input and output controls, most obvious. The output is the overall volume of the plugin. That's important, but you want to be mindful of it when you're adding more overdrive and that sort of thing to the plugin or to the amplifier. It's going to raise your output level, so you need to make an adjustment there. The input control, really important and kind of tricky at first. Most of us will take a guitar, plug it into a recording interface, start turning the preamp knobs up on it. That might send too much signal into the plugin. That's what the folks at MixWave said. So I have mine turned pretty much all the way off on my interface. And we're just going to use this input control to bring the level up into ultimately the amplifier. If you have too much signal coming in, you're going to distort the plugin and you're going to start to kind of really get some, digital distortion that's not going to be pleasant. So we got that under control. You can use it for mono or stereo input here if you're running maybe a keyboard with a stereo output to it, or maybe you're running a stereo pedal into it. That would be an opportunity to change that. This is the noise gate section if you want to use it. This amplifier doesn't have a noise gate, so they build this extra stuff into the digital domain. And it can be tricky if you don't understand it. Now, power, full and half. What happens here is 2-Rock amplifiers have a full or half power switch in most of their amplifiers, and they do something really special with their sauce to really make it become a new amplifier when you throw that switch. I don't know enough about building amps to tell you, but I know it's pretty special that it's not just dropping the power in a way that makes it quieter. It becomes a 50 or 100 watt amp, or a 20 or a 40. So they're duplicating that here as well. We have our tuner. We got a tuner right there. We have this gear control. This is really important because it's got GUI size. That's a graphic user interface. That's basically going to say how big do you want the plugin to look on your screen. You could, of course, drag it to size as well. Audio settings, really important. This is one of the most important things in any kind of situation like this. I'm showing you my output and input here from my interface, which channels are going to get assigned to the plugin, which ones are going to be on the output and the input, I should say. I had the wrong one there. So inputs and outputs are assigned. Our sample rate, really important. Generally, when I'm doing video stuff, I'm running at 48K, so it syncs up nicely to the video. You can run it at different sample rates. It's almost like pixels. The higher the sample rate, the more clearer the picture. But in the audio world, 41 to 48 is usually pretty acceptable. Now, right here, audio buffer size, really important because this is basically telling the computer how much information to take in and the speed in which to process it and put it back out. And it has to pull some power of the computer to do that. 128 gives you sort of the best of all worlds, I've found. It gives you some good processing power and low latency. The lower number you go, the lower the latency is, but you might have the plugin not working optimally. If you went up a higher number, the plugin's really cooking, but it's going to hold on to your guitar signal longer and spit it out later, thus giving you latency, like when you play and then it comes back. You want it to be as seamless as possible. 128 feels good for the most part. Now, as you're up here, this is our preset area, and we can load presets, we can save presets, we can see factory ones with guys like that. Whoa, look at that. Pretty cool. So we can take care of all that in either loading, saving, or all that kind of business. This is our amp signal chain. We're going to talk about amps, cabs, all that kind of stuff. Actually, it's just one cab, but we're going to mic it a bunch of different ways. We have input and output processing. This can be very, very tricky also. It's not just the amplifier that you're going to be able to control. You're going to be able to control the tone of the signal going into it, whether you want to compress it or not, and you're going to be able to do the same thing on the output side as well. Now, it looks like I have a little bit of compression on here, which I didn't anticipate, but it'll sound good. So we'll see and hear all that in the next clip. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do before you even start touching any of these knobs. That's why I wanted to make this segment of the video. Now we have, again, our output control. The reverb send we'll talk about more with the amp. Oversampling. Now, this is going to be basically how much processing power do we want to put into this plugin? And we want to do 8 times the processing power in this instance. Now, I'm probably saying a bunch of things out of turn. All I know is that when you have it cranked up like that, the plugin is cooking. It's different than the audio buffer size, and you're really devoting the proper amount of resources to this to make it sound as good as it can, okay? And computer resources being assigned to it, that sort of thing. Now, we also have an output limiter on here as well. You can use that if you're spiking the output a lot, and it might put it under control a little bit more. But these are really important things. Oh, you want to get the manual? Click that button right there. You can grab the manual as well. So that is the upper portion of the plugin window. Not all that fun to talk about, but it's important to make the plugin work as good as it can. So all that being said, let's jump in and finally hear some freaking sounds. So we want to get some sounds with this plugin, and the first thing we got to do is turn it on. So we turn it on, click the switch, it engages the plugin. You can hear some 60 cycle hum coming from my Novo Idris Strat style guitar. And I'm just trying to get a big, beefy, clean tone, something like this. Feels good, and it sounds super clean, like a lot of headroom, which is what I was going for with this preset that I created called Stratty OD with TS. That'll make sense down the road. But you can see my master volume is cranked 100%, and the gain control's up pretty high too. Now, when I encounter an amplifier like this, I like to see what kind of clean headroom it has on tap, because I know that that's a good place to start. If you can do that, it can get other tones as well. So I have the master cranked, the gain is really cranked, and you'll see an EQ1 and EQ2 switch on a lot of 2-rock amps, and that's like a gain structure, and it's gonna respond to different instruments differently too. Initially, they thought EQ1 would be for higher output pickups, and then EQ2 would be for lower output pickups. But I like to live on EQ2 regardless of the guitar that I'm playing. Now, as you move through the tone stack, treble, middle, bass, we probably know what that means. There is a bright switch if you want a little bit more glassy top end on the treble. Throw that up. Very subtle, but it's there if you want it. Now, the mid-range control. 2-rocks have a lot of mid-range on tap, and I wanted to actually see if I could coax some like Fendery tones out of it, which it can also do. So I turned it almost all the way down, because mid-60s Fenders have that scooped mid-range sound, and it's doing it. The problem with that from players, complaints over the years was it's not enough mids, it doesn't cut enough. So 2-rocks have loads of mid on tap. So if I bring this up a little bit, it's starting to give me a little more definition. Yeah. Now, what it offers you is a mid-range boost. That's going to be great for overdrive tones and guitars that need it, and it's going to give you a ton of mid-range. Check this out. Now, that's useful for some, maybe a slide player, but it's got lots of mids on tap if you need it. The bass control I have almost at noon, and it has this deep switch attached to it, and the deep switch kind of changes the bass frequency that we're controlling with this knob. I have it in sort of that more lumpier low end here. Now, Now when we're playing by ourselves, I should say, having it in the up position gave me a good feel, nice and, you know, cushy low end. But live, I often have that down because it's often just too much bass and I want to get out of the bass player's way. So it's nice to have those, you know, subtle controls on board. They really, really do work, and they're really, really valuable. Now, when it comes back to this mid-range control, I had it so low. Some people will say, well, why do that? Why, you know, are you getting robbed of something when you turn that down? No, you're just getting the tone it's delivering in that moment. And you can hear that we can get very Fendery in that sort of scooped mid position. And we got lots more on tap. And I think that's really valuable because you want to listen with your ears and not your eyes. A lot of times players like myself will just set everything up, you know, noonish, thinking that's like a flat EQ when it's maybe not. And it's okay to dump a control all the way. Don't worry about that. Now, as we move down the amp, we have our lead gain and our lead master. We'll play with those in a bit. But what's happening in a circuit like a 2-Rock is that everything you do here is contributing to this lead gain and master. If you had this down, this wouldn't be as saturated. The more you turn it up, it's going to help its saturation. That's going to be a really fun thing we can check out here momentarily. The bypass control bypasses the entire tone stack. Also really good for playing with overdrive tones because you're going to get more gain from the amp, and it's like we turned all of the knobs up all the way. Like that scene in Back to the Future when Marty turns all the knobs on the Marshall. It's kind of like that. It's going to give you a lot of power coming from this amp and a bunch of different sounds that we're not getting just here with this simple preset. We have our reverb control, and that's going to work with our reverb send. It's basically like a decay control for our reverb, and it's got a really nice one happening now. One of the things that happens with a 2-Rock reverb control of this variety, which is a tube-driven reverb on the real amp, when you kick in some overdrive, the reverb doesn't get all splatty. It actually kind of goes, the overdrive goes around the reverb. It's almost like, it's like skipping it, so it's not getting overdrive into reverb to make it more splatty. We'll hear that later. And then your presence control, overall high-end adjustment for your power amp. You can see, again, it's down. I got a bright sounding Strat style guitar. I don't need that. But when I'm playing humbuckers, I might bring it up to get a little bit more brightness on the top end and have it not be so dull. You know, if I had it cranked, too snappy, so don't be afraid to twist a knob even all the way off. It's totally fine, and you're not going to get sued by the tone police for doing that. Yeah, so that's basically the sound that I have going here. I want to talk about the cabinet and the miking situation because that's really where things come alive. So to get a sound like we're getting from this plugin, it's important that we learn more than just the front panel. We have to understand what's happening in the cab and microphone portion here. Now, this is a really powerful part of the plugin, and it's similar to what you'll find in other guitar plugins from other companies as well. Once you get a handle on it, you can really deep dive and experiment and realize that so much tone you've heard on recordings comes from speaker cabinets, microphones, placement, the style of microphones, all that kind of stuff. So we can experiment a lot here, which is nice, but also has some frustrating features that we want to address. So we want to get those points across too. So if we take a look here, this is a 2-Rock 212 cabinet, and you can see one microphone, and that number 1 corresponds to this panel right here. This is going to have all the adjustments for that microphone. We can turn it on or off. We can change the polarity. Obviously, if we need to invert the phase, we can. There's a knob here called Vibe. We'll explain that later, or we'll try to. You'll see what I mean. And then we can do 2-Rock top or bottom. That means we can choose which speaker in the cab we want to mic. That's going to get a little confusing. I'll explain why. So we want to mic the top speaker with a tube C12 microphone. Now, this isn't something that, I mean, you could mic a cabinet with any mic, but it's not a standard choice. I chose this one because it sounded good, and I'm going to use it again. You'll see what I mean. And we can do all kinds of things. Change the axis of the mic, the distance from the baffle and the cone, the angle of the mic, and there's a knob here called delay, which we'll explain also. It's not a delay pedal, so don't get confused. We can adjust our pan and our level of our mic, so we can really have multiple mics and then mix them, which is really cool. There's a couple other functions down here which we'll take a look at the manual and see what it says as well. Now to just hear that microphone on its own, that's just one single mic. It's going to sound like this. Right, so sounds pretty good, but what you heard me play earlier was a combination of more than one microphone. So we're going to go to number 2 and we're going to put that on, and you see it dropped it down here on the bottom speaker. This is where it gets a little wonky for me, and I don't like this, is that I'm miking the 2 rock bottom, and because you'd say, okay, 2 rock bottom, it's going to go on the bottom. But if I bring it to the top, it doesn't change. I would like to have number 2 go up there, and it won't do that. So that's kind of weird to me. I wish it didn't do that. But it's also a C12 tube mic. So I have 2 of these going at the same time. And a lot of recording engineers would be like laughing at me by now. But it sounds good, and that's all I care about. So here we go. Now, if that wasn't enough, I can add more speakers to the party. And what's interesting here, notice this one, I have the distance really far back. I wanted to try to get a little bit of air off of this speaker. Now, if I go over to 3, I'm using a ribbon microphone, and that's more like a Royer 122 style microphone. And you can see when I engage it, it says 2 rock top, it will go to the top. But even if I put 2 rock bottom, it stays on the top. I wish it didn't do that. So we'll stay back on the top. The axis is a little bit different than when I had it here. The distance was really far away. Again, this is all like not typical miking, but I'm doing it because I like the way it sounds. And I have the level pretty low. Ribbon microphones are typically a warmer, less defined sound to me, so I wanted to keep it down, but they usually add some girth and punch. But if I turned it way up, so it definitely added something, and I just want more of everything when I'm miking a guitar. Some people say just put one mic on. Yeah, that's fine. That works well. But I like having options, and I like having options to adjust the level and all that kind of stuff. What I also did previously was I messed with the panning a little bit. I just kind of started tossing them around a little bit, and it still sounded good. So now we have this big clean sound that we had in the previous segment, but we want to talk about some of those funny knobs and buttons that we can push here on this that I don't really know. So let's do that together. We can look at, let's call it number 18, the vibe knob. Does something to the top end harmonics, but don't worry about this control too much. Use your ears. Okay, well, I wish you would give me a little bit more description of what it's doing. It's going to be hard to tell. Let me turn my guitar up. Sorry, I'll do that again. Here we go. I mean, maybe a little high-end adjustment, and that you want that in the digital realm because it's usually just a little sterile up on the top end. So now we got focus in contour, and that's going to be like 13 and 14 here. Focus button removes harsh frequencies. That's a good thing. It blends the dry, clean input signal and the wet process signal. So what that's doing is it's blending the sound of the plug-in and the sound of your dry guitar, I believe. We don't have those on. Don't need them right now. The contour button adds a subtle fixed EQ, and it does the same thing. Let's see if we can hear anything there. Well, that focus really changed the high end, so you want to play around with that. And there's a reason why I had them off. I'm not using them, and they didn't do enough for me to warrant being on. You can also do some other things. This mic level match, you can get all the mic levels to be matched. I don't want that for this. And of course, I could even add a fourth mic if I wanted. I could add, you know, a 57 style or a 7B style microphone and turn that on, and maybe keep that sort of close to the middle of the speaker, nice and close. See if that did anything for us. Probably not too noticeable. Got very direct, very punchy. And that's what a dynamic microphone will do. It gets those transients that are coming off of the speaker, and it really helps to get you to be punchy. The setup I had before was a little bit more airy, a little bit more vibey. If you're playing a rock track, you'll hear, while you're recording or performing, you'll see a microphone like an SM57 or an SM7B up against that speaker because it's taking all that sound pressure level and the transients coming off of the speaker and really translating it well. So we can do a number of different things in the miking world, and you need to know about this when you get one of these. Otherwise, you'll just be spinning your wheels. The good thing is when we start playing around with some presets, all of those will change, and you'll see my philosophies for what I'm going after in this panel when I pull up different presets, which we'll do in the next segment. So we feel good about this. There's some weirdness in the manual that doesn't fully give us the goods, which I wish they did, particularly the microphone choices. I know what some of these are. I wish I knew what all of them were. That might be helpful for us. Of course, we could Google it. But yeah, so that's the cab and mic panel that is, like, I think the lifeblood of all guitar tone, particularly in the digital realm. So let's check out some presets that I made that will take us to some other tonal places. This is the first product I've ever been asked to do custom presets for. So I'm very flattered that the folks at 2Rock asked me to include some of my own personal presets. If we go down to factory, look at that, some great guitar players, and I'm happy to be included with Adam Miller, Ariel Posen, there's me. John Cordy, he'll probably make a video about how much it costs to make a plugin. So go watch that when he puts it out. Mark Williams, Osnoy Taylor, who is an employee, I believe he's a part owner of MixWave, but a great guitar player. Eli from 2Rock put a bunch of them, and then there's one called Lush Clean here as well. So one of the ones I like is called Big Clean Verb. We didn't talk about the reverb too much in this amp. It's a tube-driven reverb in the real amp, and it's got, even though it's a spring reverb, it's got loads of sort of more plate sounds to me. Great long decay. So you can do a lot of fun atmospheric-y stuff with the amp. People buy pedals just to do that. It's in your amp. I dig that one a lot. That one's got tons of reverb, and if you want to adjust the tail or how long it lasts, you change the send control here. Now let's take a look at our cab situation and miking situation. Totally different than what we had prior. If we go into 1, we have a 57. That's pretty typical. Number 2, we have a condenser down on the bottom, and it's angled. And then number 3, we have that tube microphone again, which I really, really liked. But it worked really well for this, this big verb sound. Now when I play anything that's kind of percussive, it's gonna make the reverb go nuts. So this kind of sound is better for longer things. Yeah, so big verb, and one of my favorite presets that I created in this plugin. So jump in and check that one out if you download this plugin. This guitar absolutely loves any overdriven tone, so I pulled out the Junior here, and we're going to use it with this preset I call Chewy Mid-Range Overdrive. And this kind of overdrive isn't like a Marshall-y type of sound. It's got its own thing where it's very mid-rangey and smooth. And, you know, I like doing that sort of high pick attack stuff, and it seems to replicate that really well. Check this out. And it responds to all that picking really well too, which is great. And I think that's one of the high points of this plugin, is that it does feel really good. When you get into the world of plugins, you're most likely going to need an iLok account. Now, an iLok account is a place that stores the licenses of these plugins that you purchase. Your plugin licenses can live on either a physical device or iLok's cloud-based service. So there's a trip through a guitar amp plugin, and I hope you learned a lot or had some questions answered if you purchased one of these things and you're like, man, I can't figure out what microphones to use, or I don't understand some of the bells and whistles in the plugin. It's a lot if you're just at a stage where you're using this stuff to practice at home with your computer and you might have a small interface. I get it, but that's why I wanted to make this particular video, to say, hey, this is how you might approach getting sounds and, you know, approach some of the technical stuff that's in it. It's really important as a viewer of my stuff on the channel that you walk away with a little bit of knowledge or something that you can use on your own and in your own guitar journey. So if you want to learn more about the 2-Rock Bloomfield Drive MixWave plugin, click the link below. It'll take you right to MixWave's site. They have a bunch of other really cool plugins and software as well. So check all that stuff out. And when you download that plugin and you purchase it, you'll get access to not only my presets, but other presets from people like Ariel Posen, Osnoy, and a lot more. So if you're using amp plugins, let me know what they are in the comments. A lot of our viewers will benefit from that, and me as well. I'd like to check out what you guys are using also. And of course, I'll make those backing tracks available to you as well. Click the link in the description or the comments. It'll take you to my website, workingclassguitar.com. You want to enroll and log in for free. It'll take you to a collection of videos, not only that one, but many others where you can get any track or asset that you're looking for from any of these videos on the channel. So congrats to MixWave and 2-Rock for creating a really cool plugin on the Bloomfield Drive amplifier. Don't forget to check it out, and go check out some of my presets as well. I hope you dig them. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.